Hello and welcome to this week's What Were They Thinking? This week's first segment begins with tech news. As many would know, Google has increasingly found itself at the center of a number of controversies, whether that's demonetization of YouTubers, releasing data it shouldn't, or conspiracy theories about Google's Android phones listening in and customizing adverts to your conversations. The specific expert opinion comes from an author in the Washington Post. They compared the effect of using Chrome, produced by Google, and Firefox from the Mozilla Nonprofit Foundation. Their discovery after just a week of using Firefox was that Google would have allowed just under 12,000 requests for cookies to be approved, were it not for being blocked by Firefox. They found a very large number of privacy concerns. These include being automatically logged into services, your location data being provided regardless, and websites being able to track which pages and what information you collect. These concerns add to Chrome's issues with being a RAM hog. This is in contrast to Firefox, and even Apple's Safari browser, both of which prioritize privacy. Adding to your concerns about privacy, Facebook has announced that they are rolling out their own version of a cryptocurrency named Libra. This is a rather disconcerting move by the social media platform, more so for the fact it has demonstrated some very totalitarian traits in recent history. This new currency has been backed by a large number of very successful companies who have each put up to $10 million into this new currency. The current plan for Libra is that it will only be used for peer-to-peer exchanges, very much like a money transfer. However, Facebook's Vice President of Blockchain Product Development, Kevin Weil, has stated that they intend to roll it out to other platforms such as Uber. Given the number and nature of companies that are backing this new blockchain cryptocurrency, chances are it will not just be Uber. PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, Vodafone, eBay, Spotify, and more have put money into it, presumably on the basis that they will, in very short order, be receiving the benefit of being a backer for a new currency. Facebook has said that this new currency will be run by an external body called Calibra, who will hold your wallet, but won't share any information with Facebook unless you want it to, which is a rather big claim coming from Facebook. As it stands, Libra is a very worrying development. As a result of this, more experts are moving towards the opinion that Facebook is turning into a virtual nation. The plan to launch its own currency is just one measure of an independent country. Most countries are recognized for being geographically bound, having their own government, their own people, and their own currency. As it stands now, you could argue that the users of Facebook are a population, Libra is its own currency, the administrators of Facebook are their government, and theoretically, if you were to count cyberspace, they have their own geographically discrete country. That should be a problem, since Facebook acts very much like a rogue country would. They have little regard for national law, with Zuckerberg himself recently flaunting summons to Parliament. Further to that, they have had very little self-control when it comes to protecting users' data. Going now from the hard earth and realities of life and fears of what might come, Harvard scientists say they understand how radiation from black holes could lead to the creation of life. As you might appreciate, understanding how life began has been an ongoing desire in science, something of what is the fundamental building block for life that led to it. And for a long time, it has been hard to figure that out. There has been plenty of clues along the way, with the Urey-Miller experiments being a very good example. Most academics have concluded that the necessities of life can be summarized in the Goldilocks zone, a planet that is close enough to the sun that it is warm, but not so close that it is hot, not so far away that it is too cold, but within what they call the Goldilocks zone. There is now a contender to that, which adds a secondary complication to that Goldilocks zone measurement, and that is it close enough to a black hole, but far enough away that life could exist? The reasoning behind this is that from a black hole you get radiation, which would in theory help to break up some of the atmospheric gases. In combination with the galactic gases that form a planet, this could possibly lead to life. If it is too close, the planet and the gases would be sucked into the black hole, where everything would die. Too much further out, and that atmospheric radiation wouldn't be able to penetrate and lead to the necessary building blocks for life. In health-related news, the US government's Food and Drug Authority is strongly warning people away from fecal transplants. One participant has died and another was severely sickened when they received pathogenic transplants. The treatment is receiving a great deal of popularity recently, and in some trials it is showing compelling evidence of effect. However, it is still in preclinical stages, and all trials are being used to test its efficacy and safety. That safety has yet to be established, and as these two cases in particular have demonstrated, it is not entirely without its detriment. In this case, it was the first death associated with a fecal transplant since it became a semi-common practice. The bulletin from the FDA makes a point of two things. First, that people who received these transplants and died were immunocompromised and developed a severe form of sepsis. Secondary to that is that the stool in question was obtained from the same donor. That donor was carrying a particular strain of bacteria within their gut that in this case proved to be overly aggressive for the host that received it. Being a biologically derived product, it is likely fecal transplants in the future will have to be more heavily regulated and processed to ensure that they are compliant with health and safety requirements for any new treatment. As it stands now, fecal transplants are still a very tenuous and preliminary medical procedure. Scientists have spent their time teaching seals to sing the Star Wars theme. Gray seals are surprisingly adept at mimicking human speech, even going so far as to mimic music. Researchers struggled for a time to understand the why and how of this. Hence, the experiment to teach seals how to make their own music. Repeating the same sound hundreds of times and attempting to have the seal reciprocate, they are eventually able to get the message across that they wanted the seal to mimic them. Once they were able to get that message across, the process was very quick. The researchers have found the seals use the same anatomical structures in their larynx to make these sounds as a human would. As strange as the seals are, these molluscs are more so. They are a bizarre worm-like creature that will eat rock and sand. These particular examples are only found in a short stretch of river in the Philippines. These molluscs are a form of shipworm, a species that will burrow into wood and eat it. This makes them a pest to seafarers and shipbuilders. If the disgusting worm-like molluscs disconcerted you, then you may wish to turn away now, as Australia has yielded yet another horrifying spider. This time, photos show a huntsman trying to eat an entire possum. The huntsman is not known to be venomous. However, they are very large and very fast. Their pronounced mandibles and fangs allow them to bite down and pin prey quite easily. In this case, it was a baby possum. Although unusual, it is not unheard of for huntsmen to eat vertebrates. In this case, it just happened to be an unexpected species of prey. Speaking of unexpected things eating unexpected things, Canada's pitcher plants aren't just eating bugs. Pitcher plants are known for their rather unusual way of getting nutrition. They dissolve things that fall into them in an internal acid, very much like a stomach. Generally speaking, you will find plant matter, insects, bugs, small lizards, and similar inside of a pitcher plant. Small animals that cannot escape. This is common within tropical species. However, the Canadian one is not. Instead, they found a salamander within this particular pitcher plant. The researchers went on to see if this was an anomaly or part of a larger pattern. The researchers found that up to 20% of the pitcher plants surveyed had animals in them. What is more disconcerting, the animals caught unexpectedly like this could die anything between 3 and 19 days after becoming trapped. Next is news in the medical field. China's organ transplants have long been controversial, with many arguing that organs are harvested from prisoners who unwillingly donate them. This fear has now been confirmed. An independent tribunal was established to investigate this controversy, and it has determined that there is a pervasive campaign of human rights abuses that could be considered genocide. China has long asserted that they stopped taking organs from executed prisoners. However, the rumors remained in effect, and as a consequence, the Chinese tribunal was set up. Anyone who is familiar with organ transplant knows that if you are lucky, you may get an organ within months or years. If you are unlucky, you may never receive a transplant. This is not the case in China, where it may take only weeks for an organ to arrive for a transplant. This unusual turnaround time is indicative of an excess number of organs. To be exact, one study found that in 10 days there were 640 organs transplanted from just 30 donors, meaning each donor would have to have given 21 different body parts. Considering that only 9 organs and a variety of connective tissues can be donated, this is an unexpectedly large number. This led to concerns about the organ black market. The China tribunal concluded that the vast portion of these body parts were sourced from detained Falun Gong practitioners, a politically persecuted class, an ethnic minority. In other medical news, humans are not exempt from evolution, and skeletal adaptations are an example of just that. It would appear that young people are developing unusual bony growths on their skull in response to the modern lifestyle. The bony growths were identified by Australian researchers that found up to 41% of those aged between 18 and 30 have these spurs. This is far more than the average. Some are relatively small at 10 millimeters, but others are substantially larger at 30 millimeters. These bony sites are normally part of an attachment for ligaments and muscles that help to support their head. The enhanced growth is normally a product of stress to these attachment sites. The researchers believe these growths are a product of the technological development. With more time spent staring down at a computer or phone screen, people are developing what they consider a degenerative feature. This is further supported by the other statistics they found, which include a 5-fold increase in this particular condition in males, which may be due to the increased mass of the head and neck. Although concluding that it is developed as a result of modern stress, the study is largely descriptive and a retrospective analysis of findings. There is yet to be a definitive causal relationship established. The woman received an acupuncture session, and rather than just receive a placebo treatment from her acupuncturist, her lung was punctured. The 79-year-old Portuguese woman is reported to have presented to the Centro Hospitalar Universitario de Lisboa Central. She showed up at the clinic with moderate breathing difficulties, and an X-ray revealed that the bottom right of her lung had been indented. Even in the elderly and weak, lungs do not normally just collapse. There is nearly always a cause. Because the acupuncturist had inserted the needle in a space near the shoulder blade, where the lung can come into contact with the needle when breathing heavily, the needle is able to penetrate the pleural cavity and allow air to enter in around the lung. This caused the lung to deflate, or, as has been described, collapse. In order to rectify it, the patient required the insertion of a chest tube and local anesthesia. In order to ensure she recovered, she was given oxygen and painkillers. Fortunately, she survived without any long-term impact at this stage. The final story this week is how mathematicians have proposed a new structure to the periodic table. The format you might be familiar with is not necessarily the only option out there. It is just the most common. It's compact, relatively easy to read and find information in. However, it does not necessarily describe everything in the most effective and reliable manner. Depending upon what you are doing and how frequently you consult one, you may have a different version that you prefer. Mathematicians now have their own. The mathematicians from the Max Planck Institute have developed what they consider a highly flexible periodic table that can be adapted to use in any environment and for any purpose. They consider it superior to the standard universal. Rather than develop a table based on simple data such as the number of protons in a shell or the atomic weight, the mathematicians have decided to use the way it bonds and interacts with other elements in the table. They have particularly focused on the chemical bonds and rearranged the elemental table in a way that reflects that. It is a new take on the same concept seen several times over throughout history, and although it's unlikely to supersede your traditional periodic table at this time, it may find application in niche fields and for niche purposes. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions below.